there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant, asking you, some of you, to rethink timing a little bit, rethink pre-swing. And listen, this video is not for everybody. There are a lot of ways, there's more than one way to skin a cat here. But I'm specifically talking to parents of kids that are starting kid pitch, 9, 10, somewhere in that age range, and they're really struggling with timing. And what I've learned is that what a lot of times we start with is the root problem of timing is that kids aren't loading on time. And that certainly can be true, right? This is the obvious thing. But what I want to share with you today is by reverse engineering this process a little bit, some of you are going to make this a little bit simpler. So for instance, we tend to talk about pre-swing movement as, okay, we'll talk, first off, pre-swing is from the stance to when my front foot gets down. That's pre-swing movement, all of that here. So we tend to say, all right, this is the loading phase, and then there's the stride phase, right? Is that wrong? No. But I want to share something with you today that maybe can simplify this a little bit for your kids that are learning the game. So what's the most important thing about pre-swing movement? Well, pre-swing movement is timing. And what we tend to do these days on YouTube is we make pre-swing movement into power moves, right? Everything that people, oh, you got to load into this hip a certain way, you got to do this, and listen, I'm not saying those are bad ideas. I'm just saying, what's the fundamental root problem with kids learning the game? They don't understand timing. And so if I want players to understand timing, I go to the main source for timing. And so instead of teaching players, and it's not wrong to do this, okay, but instead of breaking it up into let's load and then stride, right? Instead of doing that, with some players, what I do is I try to get them to focus and simplify this by thinking about the main timing mechanism. So the front leg and front foot are the main timing mechanism. Fundamentally, that's the main thing. If I don't get it up in time, if I don't get it down in time, I'm going to be in trouble. So even for a no strider, if I don't get my front heel up in time and get my front heel down in time, I'm going to have terrible timing. Okay, so I want you to look at this maybe a little bit different. By the way, this is Alex Bregman. Hopefully it's okay that I'm using this video, but he has one of my favorite channels on YouTube. And one of the things that I like about it, when he talks about hitting, I think it's, when I hear it, I was like, yes, every dad that has a kid learning the game can take something away from what he's talking about. They really work on some very fundamental things that I think are great ideas for kids. And I love his coach. They're just great. It's just a great channel all the way around. And here what he's doing is, you know, again, I don't think that Bregman thinks about timing the way that I'm going to talk to you about, but I'm just going to share this with you. So let's reverse engineer the feeling of Bregman's particular pre-swing movement here. All right, so instead of thinking of this as a load phase and then a stepping phase, let's rethink this a little bit. So when kids are learning the game, we obviously have to talk to them about loading weight back because of the things that they do, right? So what most kids do is they take the front foot, right, and they basically scoot it forward across the ground. They either step forward or they step sideways, however you want to look at it, but it's basically I'm going where the ball is, right? That's kind of a natural instinct that we all have when we're learning the game. And so, but Bregman here is doing something a little bit different in the pre-swing, right? So I want you to think about the big muscle groups in the thigh area, but the quadricep, the hamstring muscles. I'm not an anatomy expert. The hip flexors, the supporting structure and ligaments around the front knee. All of these muscle groups, right, are basically picking Bregman's front foot up straight off the ground. So you can see how his heel is picking up straight underneath his knee, right? So he's literally using those muscle groups to pick his foot up, all right? So that's different than when we established for kids learning the game. Kids use the muscles underneath the knee in order to pick their foot up and go forward, okay? And so we're using a whole different set of muscle groups here. And what this does naturally, right, and we don't have to dissect the pre-swing into a lot of different pieces, right? If I use the big muscle structure in my front leg to pick the foot straight up off the ground, every human on the planet is going to preset more weight back, right? If I use the hip flexors, the front knee, all that to pick my front foot up straight up off the ground, I'm going to put weight back. Why is this little detail, and kind of an awkward way of looking at this, why is this important? Well, I think that we tend to do with kids is we dissect them into a bunch of pre-swing stuff. Here's your load. You got to do this. Don't load over your back knee. Make sure your hip doesn't do this. You got a bunch of rules, and kids are making timing into this very complex operation. And again, at the end of the day, pre-swing is just timing. When I get my foot up off the ground, when I put my foot down. It's the basic root problem that kids have to learn. So by teaching this method, instead of thinking loading, and trying to get them to focus on the big muscles picking their leg up off the ground, then they're actually working on the main timing mechanism. And at the same time, they're presetting weight back, right? Which is really important. So we watch Bregman over here in a moving target environment, right? I can assure you this, right? That Bregman has been hitting this pitching coach for a long time. And what you'll see is when that arm swings forward like that, that front leg for Bregman always picks up at that time. Right? So I could load perfectly into my back hip, have a hip trigger, whatever you want to call these things, right? I could do all those things perfectly, and the guy could throw the ball, and then I pick my leg up when the ball's halfway home, and it's all that stuff was for nothing. Right? But if I'm thinking about the front leg picking up at a certain time, right, then I'm probably going to be able to think about getting my front foot and leg down at a certain time. And so one of the things you can hang your hat on in this environment, when that ball is halfway home from this coach, right, that he's seen 1,000 times, his front foot and front leg always get down at the same time so that he can put an A swing off in an environment like this, right? So he's never going to get that front leg and foot down late, not from this coach. Maybe if somebody gets on the bump, they're throwing 90, maybe he'll have some little timing things here and there, but here in front toss, not going to happen. Why? Because the most critical thing happened here for Bregman. When he picked his leg up, right, when he put his leg down, right? That's what you want your kid to know. So is this a conclusive argument for pre-swing movement for everybody on the planet? No. But I hope that some of you right now that are watching and saying, yeah, I've made this into a loading thing. And no matter how much work you've done, I'm not talking about you guys that have done a bunch of that and your kid's doing great, okay? I'm talking about those of you that the kids start in the game, and no matter what you do, talk about timing, you talk about loading and all that, they still have difficult time. Well, put their attention on the main timing mechanism, right? If the front foot and front leg don't do the right thing at the right time, right, in the delivery, you're going to be in trouble. If the front foot and the front leg don't get down in time, you're going to be in trouble. Now, you've built the foundation, right? You've built the foundation now. When a player understands fundamentally what timing is, now you can go back and maybe focus biomechanically in areas that, a lot of people talk about loading and things like that a certain way. Maybe that's a benefit to your player at some point. But right now what you're after with your 9 or 10-year-old is to understand, well, I want to be on time. Because nobody's ever put a good barrel on a ball that's always late, always early, right? You want to start seeing better quality of contact, then you make sure that they understand this basic concept. And I realize it's a little backwards than how people normally talk about it, but we're talking about kids learning the game. What's most important in pre-swing? To recognize that pre-swing movement is timing. And if my front foot and front leg don't move at the right time, if they don't get down at the right time, then I'm not going to be a good hitter no matter how much hip loading I've learned. It's just not going to matter. So, by the way, I just learned what algorithms are. And you guys know I never say, hey, please hit thumbs up or thumbs down. I never say anything. Hey, hit subscribe. But, if you would interact with the video, if you found something here that you feel like was helpful, please do so. That way I can, somehow it'll push 8 other viewers. I really appreciate all 8 of you that watch these. But I'm trying to get up to 16. No, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. Thanks.